So we're gonna be talking about fasteners today, and they're small, so you might want to be closer.
Yeah.
I've got a handout here. Which is
Go ahead, go.
just what I'm
You walk across.
gonna talk about.
Yeah. Okay, so that's
And so,
Are they close enough?
well, you know, I'll tell you what. They're gonna be looking at this.
You want me to walk, try to walk it around?
So, we're gonna talk about marine fasteners today. And most of you already know all of this stuff. But it's like with anything you do in life, the more you know, the harder you have to work to know just a little bit more. So maybe there's a jewel in here for you. We're gonna walk through materials, the types of fasteners that are available, and then where do you buy them? So, first, we have construction fasteners, which are typically, and I'm going to pass these around. These are typically steel, and they're not a marine fastener, but they're very good to be used for your building frames, for temporary fasteners, that sort of thing. And that's the only place they should be used. And we'll just pass those around. So there's a bunch of zinc plated steel, which you never ever want to use as a permanent part of any boat, because the zinc plating just doesn't last. I mean, it might last a season, but then it's gonna start breaking down, and you have bigger problems. And then there are galvanized fasteners. And a lot of boats, a lot of traditional wooden boats in the past have been built with galvanized fasteners, because galvanized fasteners are cheap. You know, it's to give you a sense of this. A steel fastener, and I just took an 1.25 by 8 in onesie twosies from Bolt Depot, 1.25 by 8 Phillips or Frierson. A steel fastener, zinc plated, is like 16 cents. A 3/16 stainless steel, which is the boat building grade stainless, 53 cents. And silicon bronze, 70 cents. So once you get into boat building quality material, it doesn't cost that much more to go full speed. So I want to pass these around. This is a 16-penny casing nail. There's 2 of them. They're galvanized. They, the one that is black came out of my house, which was built in 1969. Okay, and I pulled this out of the house, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago. And you will notice that there's not a whole lot of it left up near the head where it's been getting water. And this is what happens to the galvanized fasteners in your boat. And while you think, okay, well, you know, that's not so bad, right? I can live with that after 20 years. But if you've got a pretty good sized boat and you need to refasten it, and one of the things that you haven't counted on is what that corrosion does to the wood, because it's also, and I'm not a chemist, nor did I play one on TV, but there is a chemical reaction that goes on that causes decay in the wood, and you're stuck.
Yeah, the iron acts as food for bacteria.
Okay.
Which then are eating the wood.
Yeah. And
Wood's deficient in iron for their diet.
I mean, we've all seen old wooden boats with rust streaks. That's the galvanized fasteners breaking down. And just to gild the lily here, there's galvanized, such as this lag screw, and there is zinc plated. And once you see the two side by side, it's really easy to figure out which one is which. Okay, so
Zinc model.
next we move to stainless steel. And stainless steel fasteners are wonderful. As long as they're the correct stainless steel fastener. The preferred alloy is for boat building is the 316 stainless. And the way you tell a 316 stainless, this is a magnet right here. I can't pick it up with a magnet.
316.
316, yeah. But a 304, or there are multiple alloys. There's some iron in the alloy, and the iron is what's going to get you. So you want to be really careful. Now the really good news is everything in this tray was purchased at my little neighborhood hardware store out of their bulk bins. And most of it is 316. But you don't know. So you just carry a magnet with you and you figure out, you know, what you can use from there, because I guarantee you, if you go to A-Boy, it costs a whole lot less for a stainless steel screw than West Marine, all right? It's just, so then we get to the prints, and that is the copper alloys and the primary copper alloy that we use is silicon bronze. Silicon bronze is wonderful in that it does not cause decay even if water gets in there. It's so your hull panels are gonna stay better. They're brass, so we will pass around some wonderful silicon bronze here. they're brass. Now brass is typically not used, there's a naval brass, which is, I gotta go to my notes, but brass is another copper alloy. And naval brass is more resistant to salt water because it has more copper. And if you put those side by side, wherever they went, oh, you gotta watch Chuck. You might want to keep those. And then finally, so brass is like, okay, but it's not as strong. You gotta make sure it's naval brass, and how you tell that, I have no idea. Again, back to the science part of this. I'm not a scientist. But I thought this was kind of interesting because I had these around and one of the Crater Lake boats. Okay, so those things were built in, God, anybody remember? 60s, yeah. And they were just dismantled, as we know, this year. But take a look at the condition of those screws. So they were in those holes since the 1960s, and it's just flipping amazing to me.
Brass.
No, bronze.
Bronze.
Yeah. Finally, there's copper. And copper is not really a structural material. So you will see it as nails. You shouldn't, anything you want to stay on your boat, for sure, don't use copper.
Mark, you see copper's not structure, but ring neck copper nails, obviously they're
Right.
intended to stay.
Yeah.
That's structural.
But you can also get ring shank bronze nails. And
really?
so if you really want to build with nails, you ought to be building with bronze.
Ah, okay. I didn't,
We
didn't know
built
they
the
existed.
elegant punts with ring shank, but combination with epoxy and ring shank.
Oh, yeah.
So that basically the ring shanks hold it in place while the epoxy sets.
Right.
And then the ring shanks at least don't rust out.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, again, a temporary fastener.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but one that then doesn't fail later on and contributes to the boat rotting.
Yeah. And so basically, what are the types of marine fasteners that we're using? Tacks that are going around, nails, rivets, screws, and a variety of different head styles for those screws. And one of the things that I really want to talk about is with bronze screws, you have the option of a square drive, a slotted, and a Frierson, not a Phillips. It looks like a Phillips, but it ain't.
Oh.
So the Frierson is actually machined, and it is this incredibly wonderful fit. And I I was gonna bring a couple screws that I'd screwed up
Yeah.
by not applying enough pressure, and I spaced it out. But the Frearson is a really, I mean, just test out that fit.
Whoa. Huh.
Yeah. So this is not a Phillips screw, and there are
Cool, huh?
3 different Frearsons, a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3. If you really like it, if you have a number 1, which will be a tiny one, it'll probably be a number 6 screw. And you don't have a number 1 bit, which is tiny, use the number 2 and make sure you lean into it. Because the tips are essentially the same. And then we can also just pass these 2 things around.
Sure.
A Phillips and a Frearson. That's a Phillips number 2.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Phillips number 2 on the screwdriver, and a Frearson, and they're just ever so slightly different. If you try to use a Phillips driver on your bronze screw, which in this case, you know, each one of these screws is a couple of bucks. Don't try to use a Phillips driver on it, because you're gonna booger the head on it, and you're gonna hate yourself in the morning, right?
Do you use power tools for all those, or you tend to
No,
pilot and then hand so they're soft,
No, yet, no, always use I always use a power driver, because I've just been driving too many screws, and I'm old, you know. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna hand drive these screws. Now, if you talk to a real traditional boat builder, they're gonna be building, and they're building with bronze. They're gonna be building with slotted.
With what?
With slotted screws.
Yeah.
And why is that? Slotted screws are a little bit cheaper. And more importantly, when you go to repair that boat, like when somebody goes to repair this boat in 20 years and I'm dead, they're gonna hate me, because it's full of Frearson screws, and they're gonna play hell getting them back out. Well, a slotted screw you can almost always get back out. So,
Do you also wax them before driving them?
yeah, basically like in the keelson of this boat, which I know this is, you know, that's where the water's gonna go, right, when it gets in. So what I've done is they were driven with all the screws were driven with wax. Then just a toilet wax ring. Works great, cheap, and lasts for years. I basically have a lifetime supply of wax on that one ring, but then when it got upright, I went through and removed every screw and every lag screw. Wiped everything down, and then they're all epoxied, and then chased again with a pilot bit and driven with bedding compound. because I want to keep the water out. It's like I'm doing everything I know to keep the water out of that keelson and keel.
So Mark, you're just doing metal. Why not wooden studs and pegs? And I was just at the Maine Maritime Museum a couple months ago, and the clipper ships, I mean the big ships from that era, were done with different sized pegs. I mean the hulls, and some of them huge and some small.
Well, you know why?
Why?
Because this,
Right, of course.
at that time,
Yeah.
would have been hand carved, right? So it was just not practical to use screws, and it was too expensive. Whereas now, you know, we got machines that do this, and so why wouldn't we use them? I mean, if you want to use pegs, go for it. But you won't find me using pegs.
You could also lash it.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. You can tie it together. So, and then, you know, we've got lag bolts, machine bolts, carriage bolts, that are primarily used in larger construction and not our little boats. Although I think Bill, isn't there there's a machine bolt in the, or a carriage bolt in the keel.
Machine bolt in the keel, just
Machine
one.
bolt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at the
one
aft
machine
end.
bolt.
Yeah, yeah,
in the shellback dinghy.
yeah.
Now, where do we get them? On the flip side, there's a whole bunch of places to check, and of course, for like Parkware's Hardware and A-Boy and that sort of thing, or maybe even St. John's Hardware. I don't know.
That's an ace.
Yeah, but I don't know what they have in their.
We have a wall of both.
Yeah.
Plus
But-
a wall
and
of
again,
packaging.
if you're buying stainless steel, take your magnet, and you will probably buy for pennies on the dollar, you know.
I don't think they have anything bronze though. Yeah,
Yeah,
they have some.
probably not.
Yeah, some copper, but not bronze.
So, I've really started, for a long while, I was using Bolt Depot online as a really reasonable cost, reasonable for $2 screws. But you know the thing is, that's a $2 screw, but at West Marine, it's an $8 screw. You know, I mean that's the kind of thing that's going on. But I really have fallen in love with the Fairwind fasteners because they have really high quality materials and they ship bang. They ship really quickly, so it's been nice. And
Fairwind? Fairwind?
Yeah.
Fairwind
It's on the back side of
fasteners.
the sheet.
Yeah, it's on the back of the sheet. And so yes,
Do you think that Crater Lake boats, that the fasteners get better because of the boats going in salt water?
well, the bronze probably not. You know, I really don't know, but I would think. I don't know. Have you seen? Has anybody seen degraded bronze fasteners that are real serious silicone bronze fasteners.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what makes bronze the gold standard for
My
what we
understanding
do.
is, like with the brass, it'd be crazy because the zinc leaches out. The copper is resistant to
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
being a problem, but zinc
Right.
is the issue.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like let's say in heavy construction, I know at least one bridge built with steel, that they let it corrode on the surface because the steel has copper in it. And the copper puts a stop to corrosion beyond a surface film forming on. And so in steel on frame boats, they do another kind of stainless steel, staples, with stainless steel staples with copper in the stainless steel. And so the copper keeps the stainless steel from corroding, because stainless steel, when it's driven in over a very long time, it also corrodes,
Yeah. Yeah.
even the non-magnetic stuff.
Right. Right.
And the copper is supposed to, especially since staples are so much more delicate
Oh yeah.
than screw.
Mm-hmm.
And they, when you buy them, they'll say, staples will say, for marine use, or will not say for marine use. And it says for marine use, and you'll see that it says in there it's they're made using Monel.
Now,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
And that was gonna be a question here. Is there another grade of stainless steel? I mean, that was neat that you have 304 or 316. Is there another grade of stainless steel that has copper in it?
There are multiple fastener. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, because copper's deadly to that.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark.
Yes.
Last question. Chemistry has changed the way we build boats. And are fasteners really necessary when you've got epoxy and clamps? And why do we bother, or should we bother? Are you doing your boat because you think it's necessary, or because you think it's old school, or what?
I would have had a very different answer for you 2 years ago. Because Mojo, you know, the little blue boat,
Yeah.
that doesn't have a screw in it. It doesn't have a permanent screw anywhere.
Right.
Structurally, it only uses fasteners to attach things.
Yeah.
It's all glued. No worries. You know, when this thing was upside down, it got glued together with temporary screws. As I was climbing all over it and putting the fasteners in, which basically, if you look at the fillers here, each one of those is a screw. This thing just tightened up. It didn't move as much. Once the fasteners were in, and it's a feeling I have. I've built it this way because this is what Doug Hyland suggested, right? But it turned me into a believer, at least on larger structures, that those fasteners are actually doing something.
We're actually what?
Are actually doing something. They are doing something more than just holding the glue in place. It was pretty amazing. So,
building a little, 10-foot dinghy,
I'd
you
do
would
it.
still glue the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, the epoxy is just so good. Yeah.
It has changed, modern chemistry has changed all this stuff. And, so fasteners have to be part of the picture, understanding how structural glue can be.
Yes, yes. But there was definitely a difference in rigidity once all the fasteners the permanent fasteners were in place. It was pretty amazing.
And those are put in after it was epoxy?
After it was epoxy, before the fiberglass went on.
But it was epoxy, and then the fasteners were put in, but when the fasteners were put in after being epoxy, you noticed it was stiffer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because, you know, the process was you glued it and then used temporary screws to hold it all together. And then come back, remove all those temporaries and make sure that you had epoxy in that screw hole, and then drove the permanent fasteners.
I mean, like this boat is glued lap straight, so it's,
Right.
you might have fasteners at the end.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a fastener in there.
Well, like the Parashop 10 that I built with Steve,
Yeah.
it only has fasteners at the end. However, when it came off the molds, it was quite flexible, even though the strakes are fastened at both ends.
Yeah.
But as I added the quarter knees and the cleats in the seats, it stiffened it up.
Yeah. So, that's all I got unless there's more question.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dustin?
Another couple small points. We probably maybe only applies to larger vessels, but in terms of choice of fasteners, you're talking about rigidity. The hull in a lot of different parts of the boat are under, especially larger vessels and under sail, under stresses, sometimes enormous stresses, and some of the fastener selection, my understanding is based on the ductility as well as the weather resistance.
Mhm.
So silicon bronze also happens to be somewhat ductile
Yeah.
because of probably because of the copper content.
Yeah.
But you can imagine in certain scenarios where you would want that component to yield versus brittlely fail, especially under like a state rig,
Mm-hmm.
or you can imagine if you have a fastener that's too stiff in the hole, let's say, that the yielding part would be the plank that it's in or the part that it's in, as opposed to the fastener itself, if you were to impact something. Those are things are probably not things that are considered for smaller vessels, but for larger vessels that experience those huge forces, I've heard some things about that.
Yeah, well, you know what that brings to mind is, and this is along those same lines, is I was having trouble in my house, in that we were getting a lot of flex on the 3rd floor, and so I wanted to put in a shear wall. And so I talked, at the time, I was on a project team for the Pioneer Courthouse. And basically that building it's pretty much held together by the floor plates and the floor plates are big shear planes. And so I started talking to the structural that was on the job, and told him what I was dealing with at home. And he says, "Oh yeah, I'll send you a nailing pattern, and that's easy. I'll send you an email this afternoon." So it's great. I followed up with the question of kind of these construction screws, and the answer was absolutely not, because the degree of the temper was higher on a screw than a nail, and they wanted the flex of the nail. So that's exactly what you're talking about, right? In that you want this thing to bend, you don't want it to break.
Interesting.
And lastly, for corrosion and stainless steel, dissimilar metals can cause corrosion if they're in contact. It's not severe with this because if you have like a large stainless steel element you're putting on your boat, let's say maybe it's an accessory on the cabin or something, and you're using a fastener that's not stainless steel, or maybe it's aluminum and you're using stainless steel, it can cause local corrosion because of contact between those two. And I don't remember which ones stick to each other. I think it's zinc and stainless steel or something, but
Yeah, well, and it's just dissimilar metals, right? And so there's a reason that your what do I call them?
Sacrificial zincs.
Yeah, it's a sacrificial zinc, because the zinc is lower on the food chain as metals go, and so it corrodes, and your stainless steel propeller doesn't.
Thank you.
That's helpful.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Here's some of your